So with the too much and too little HCl, some people, their gut lining is so inflamed. They have atrophic gastritis, meaning that gut lining has gotten really thin, and they may not be able to handle much HCl. Even though they need HCl, they may not be able to handle it. And that becomes dicey. So it's all about helping people where they're at. Even though they need something, if they can't receive it, then we need a backup plan. And so you got to know where people are at. And so some people, their digestive system or symptoms actually get better with more HCl. Even though their gut has a lot of problems and they have a lot of inflammation, some people, their gut lining integrity can still deal with the HCl. When you start adding HCl and it's like they start getting better and you're like, but your gut's so inflamed, how are you able to receive it? But then patient A over here couldn't receive it. So everyone's a little bit different. And so if we're going to try HCl, I mean, ideally, don't try it if you know there's any ulcerations, coughing up blood in the stool. I had one person, though, a couple people who've had ulcerations, though, did it. And they're like, it helped my issues. I felt so much better. And actually, my ulcers stopped. Now, that may be the exception. I'm just kind of highlighting if you are that person, tread lightly, work with a practitioner. And of course, all reactions are dose dependent. So if you're going to test it, try the very smallest dose you possibly can, maybe even a little bit of lemon juice or apple cider vinegar and some water, dilute it down, and then test it. And if you overdo it, you can always try a little bit of baking soda in water to kind of calm it down if you irritated it. But ideally, don't do it unless you're working with someone that's helping you on the functional medicine side. And if you do it, make sure it's dose dependent on that side.
Yeah, good call. So we'll give a couple numbers. I think numbers are helpful. So if you're working into HCl, I know you and I, we have some professional manufacturers we work with. We make our own line of digestive products. We go pretty conservative, like 200 milligrams of betaine per capsule. So we could dose that as low as 1 cap, 200 milligram. We could go up 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you could go, I'd say 200 on the low end up to, I personally don't see a need much beyond maybe a couple of grams, 2,000 milligrams. And even that to me is sometimes too high for certain people. I just don't like to push it. I know you and I've talked about that test where people will take a ton of HCl until they get burning and then back down from that dose. But I prefer not to poke the beehive. So I personally don't do that with people.
So I will do that within 5 or 6 capsules. And it depends. If someone has a lot of digestive distress, we're typically not going to go that high, but usually within 5 or 6 capsules, that tends to be okay. And Dr. Jonathan Wright's book, Why You Need Stomach Acid, he talks about, being able to go up to 4 to 5 grams of HCl. And again, I typically wouldn't do that if someone's having any ulcerations or any incredible gastritis issues. Usually we're going to test at a much smaller level than that. And even with them, we're still starting at maybe 1 capsule and we're gently going up. And of course, we're taking the digestive support in the middle of the meal, because if your gut's raw and inflamed, just enough of that acid leaning on that gut lining directly isn't going to be a problem. At least if there's some food down, then think of the Oreo cookie, right? You get the cream, you get the frosting in the middle. Think of the HCl is in the middle of all the food. And therefore the body tends to mix it up. And then when it starts moving throughout the intestinal tract or throughout the stomach, it's not going to be as intense at the tissue area. And so that tends to be very helpful. And I'll typically, try it within 4 or 5 capsules, see if we have an improvement. Some people do. I hear doctors doing that up to 10, 20 capsules. I think you're just messing with trouble. You're messing with fire there, because your body has to use bicarbonate from the pancreas to start to neutralize the acid from the stomach. So like that domino rally of digestion, you have all this chyme mixed up in your stomach. That chyme is all the food with the acids and the enzymes that has to get released from the stomach down into the small intestine. And so it's nice, low pH. Once that goes into the small intestine, right, the duodenum, we start making a whole bunch of bicarbonate to neutralize that. Now, bile acid will also be produced. Bile acid's still an acid. It's still a pH of around 5 or so. So it's still on the acidic side. People have written in, oh, bile acids, well, it's a pH neutral. Well, we're talking bile acids. Bile is made up of bile acids, cholesterol, a lot of different substances. So the bile acids are, in their very nature, by their name, on the acidic side. So typically your body's trying to take that pH and bring it up to a neutral pH. And the more you stress it with tons and tons of HCl, there's a greater chance that your bicarbonate system may not be able to handle it from your pancreas, and you could develop a peptic ulcer. So we got to be careful with that. Try to use HCl within a reasonable range. And if you're going to test it, and you just be careful with it. Just be careful. Make sure you're taking a look at your gut and making sure you're knowing what your calprotectin levels are, and you're taking it the right way.
That is like the pinnacle of edutainment right there. That was so entertaining to listen to.